Alright, we just planned our battery capacity and we came up with 265 amp hours a day in consumption with all the electric. And I don't know if I'll divide these in multiple videos or not, but if I do, there's a previous video that talks about how to plan your amp hour consumption. And if not, then this will be all one big video. But either way, previously in this video or in a different video, we sized our amp hour consumption. So now we know what our battery capacity needs to be. So 265 amp hours. So our first column here is going to be lead acid. And we're going to have AGM. We're going to have lithium ion. Alright, so if we are going to use lead acid, we need to have 2x our amp hour draw. So if you're doing lead acid batteries and your draw is 265 amp hours, that means you have to have, what's that, 530 amp hours of lithium ion. Because with lead acid, you should plan on discharging them no lower than 50%. Same is true with AGM, 530.
Oh wow, I was looking at 200 amp hours. I totally miscalculated.
And with lithium ion, you basically match it to your capacity, so you need around 265. That is every 24 hours. So then, if you're going to camp for 2 days, that means between day 1 and day 2, you need a way to get some level of energy back into the batteries. And so what I typically kind of look at is you match your watts in solar, roughly speaking, to your amp hours, right? So in this scenario here, you would want about 500 watts of solar in any of these options. Does that make sense to you? And you got room up top for 500 watts in panels.
Yeah, one panel, a decent one. I guess I can put the hard ones, right? I don't need the flexible.
Exactly. Yeah, you can
do a little more.
Put two. You might get away with 200, 230 watt panels. Yeah. So
yeah, I've got lots of room because I'm 8 feet minus a little bit if I don't want to go to the edge. So I'm going to have 8 feet by probably 8 feet of room.
So just kind of a rule of thumb here on panels. So you never get. So let's say you had 400 watts of panels, and let's say that even in peak sun you're only getting 70% capacity. So you're getting what, 320 watts at that moment. And you might get sun like that for 3 hours a day. So you're adding back in 900 watts. So you have roughly 900 watts of energy coming back in. And I think the way you convert that is amps times volts get you to watts. Or said differently, watts divided by volts would get you to amps. So what's 900 divided by 12?
Oh, more math.
More math.
I need to have my calculator out and ready.
Yeah.
If I can find it. Wrong phone. 900 divided by 12.
Yeah.
You got 75.
So you're going to add 75 amp hours back.
In a day. If I have 3 hours of sunshine with 300
and 400 watts, 400 watt panel, 70% efficiency, 3 hours of sunshine, you'd add 900 watts back. I mean, you're getting about 75 amp hours. So if you drain your batteries fully the first day,
I have nothing for...
You have nothing for day 2.
Yeah.
All right. So this is where you kind of, we know what we're drawing. Now we overestimated the draw a little bit, but you kind of want to do that on purpose. So the closer you can get to 500 or 600 watts of solar, probably the better. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to be using the mood lights a lot less.
Yeah. Or just the mood lights and nothing else.
But if you remember, we should have taken a picture of it. Well, we have a picture of it.
Yeah.
But if you look at your draw, then you might say, well, we can only run the stereo for a couple hours a day,
Yeah.
right? Because that was one of our big consumers.
It was, yeah.
On there. So we probably want to be shooting for closer to 600 watts, and even at that, you're going to be budgeting power.
Definitely.
Yeah. The only way you deal with that is you double your capacity up here.
Yeah.
For amp hours, which means that if
I can catch up.
you're draining the tank daily a little bit, and you're using solar to put some energy back in the tank, but you're putting less in every day than you're draining, and so you're just slowly going down, but you can make it 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you need to try to put back in daily what you're taking out daily. So, something to think about. So we need at least 600 watts, probably 800.
So a panel,
Yeah.
like a typical rigid panel,
Yeah.
would be how much? How many watts?
Well, it depends. I mean, you can get them 100 watts, you can get them 200 watts, you can probably get them in 400 watts in a
So
panel.
say 200 is typical.
Yeah, yeah.
And those panels are,
Size-wise, we'll have to look them up and get
Yeah.
the dimensions.
so it'll be a little bit of function of space, price, how many watts,
Yep.
and balance all this out.
I think the theoretical limit is 1 kilowatt per cubic meter, or per square meter.
Okay.
So if you got 3 foot by 3 foot, in theory at 100% efficiency, you ought to be able to get 1 kilowatt out of that. The panels aren't anywhere near
Right.
theoretically efficient, so. All right.
Okay. So the car stereo is going.
Garcia, you can keep the mood lights, but,
Yeah.
but no music.
The fridge goes too. Keep the
Yeah.
mood lights. I have my calculator ready. Jeez, you're
Yeah,
throwing math
it's
at me.
good. All right, so let's talk about pros and cons of lead acid versus lithium ion. Now that we covered that little solar sizing exercise behind the scenes. So lead acid, one of the big advantages of it is going to be the cheapest of the options. AGM is going to be slightly more expensive than your lead acid, and lithium ion is going to be very expensive, relatively speaking. Weight, so this is cost. Weight. Here, these get a high for heavy, and L for the lightest, and these are relatively the same in weight. Is that showing up okay on the board?
And they're a lot more expensive, I guess, when they're deep cycle. At least
Yeah.
the Lexus one.
All of these options effectively we're playing a deep cycle.
Right.
Yeah, which means that you can discharge them deep over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. So just kind of on our chart, so we got lead acid, AGM, lithium ion. We need 530 amp hours here with lithium ion, or I'm sorry, with lead acid, 530 amp hours with AGM, 265 amp hours with lithium ion, and then we've got relative costs. So our lead acid are going to be the cheapest, and they're about $100 per amp hour, 110. So you're talking about maybe we're going to have to check this, but directionally, $600 of cost there. Our AGM is going to be about 1.5x times that, so 600. What's that?
900.
$900 for AGM batteries.
No calculator.
A calculator. And lithium ion. What's 265 times 12?
I need a calculator for that. 265 times 12. 3180.
3180 watts.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's $3,000. All right, so the big price difference, right? But here, these things are probably 40 pounds a piece, and you've got at least 5 of them there, so you probably got 250 pounds of weight here. 250 pounds of weight here, and over here you probably have 50 pounds of weight. So you really get a weight advantage with the lithium ion. Cold performance though. These perform really well. H is the right letter there. These are good in cold. These are good in cold, and these are bad in cold. And so the battery's going to be inside, but you're going to get less efficiency out of them on cold days unless the diesel heater's running.
Right.
So if the diesel heater's running, you'll be fine there. Cold performance, what are the trade-offs? If we're going lead acid or AGM, so simplicity. If we're going lead acid or AGM, we're basically building the whole things ourselves, right? So this is do DIY and DIY, and then you could buy a goal zero here, and this would be drop in. Right, everything.
And portable.
Portable.
Yeah.
And if you had a power outage, you could bring it in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of advantages to lithium ion. This is your biggest consideration, cost, and your second biggest consideration is going to be cold weather performance. But, you know, if money is not an object and you think you're going to keep the trailer mostly warm, then lithium ion is a great way to go. Because the other thing, you know, you were talking about brakes on the trailer, axle weight, you know, if you're only planning on adding 1,000 pounds to your build, there's a quarter of it right there, just in batteries, right?
Yeah.
So, any thoughts on how you're leaning on batteries?
Well, I was thinking AGM first,
Yeah.
without doing all the analyzing here, and the weight is a real issue.
Yeah.
Is it $2,100
Worth the issue?
worth?
Oh, I hear Scout. There you go. Go and.
Guess you can do a little more.
So, I mean, the thing is, you can go buy some batteries and just toss them in there.
Yeah.
But by doing it this way, you kind of know exactly how it's going to perform and whether you're going to be running out of power or not and all those types of things. So it's a little bit more involved to do it this way, but it kind of gives you a sense of where you're going to land, which you probably want to know in advance before you spend money on it. And I don't think a lot of people go through an exercise of actually doing this. It's more trial and error. So.
I would have definitely short. No, and I would have gone way short on amp hours.
Yeah.
I really underestimated.
Well, and we can do an Excel spreadsheet and double check our rough calculations.
Yeah.
But we're in the ballpark, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you saw how we did it. We looked at, okay, what do they draw?
Yeah.
How long are we going to be drawing them? How many amp hours do we need? And so we kind of ground up, size the system to kind of get a sense of what you're going to need.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you know, you're probably light because you're talking about using 265 a day, which some people on YouTube will like, oh my God, 265 amp hours a day, that's a lot. And then some people are going to be like, yeah, that's not that much. And so kind of depends. You can budget power, but you want to go and enjoy yourself. You don't want to be out there like budgeting power and, you know, hey, don't plug that in. Don't charge the iPhone right now. You know, we're running low on power. So, I mean, you could make an argument to say that 265 amp hours, you should just double it because then you have 2 days. If you have no sun for 2 days, which is a real possibility, right? If it's stormy and rainy and cloudy, you could be going 2 days without any power. And I mean, so it's, you know, it's a real thing. So out of that though, weight, like you said, is probably one of your biggest considerations because you're trying to stay under 1,000, 1,200 pounds in your build, and your batteries right now are taking up roughly a quarter of it. And that was a guess on my part, but if you Googled the weight of a lead acid battery, I'm going to say it's going to be about 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Because I've never picked up a car battery that I didn't feel like was...
No, they're heavy. Probably at least 40. So looking at that, what's the difference between AGM and lead acid at this point?
The difference between AGM and lead acid is that the lead acid batteries, or the AGM batteries, I think it stands for absorbed glass matte, and so they're kind of, almost you can think of it as laminated inside, the way they do the anode and cathode. And so in theory, you'll get more charge and discharge cycles on your AGM batteries. And so let's say with your lead acid batteries, you might end up replacing those every year or two with a lot of use. Your AGM batteries, in theory, you should be able to get 3. And so I think they talk about that in terms of cycles, right? So discharge cycles.
Right.
So in your lead acid, you're in the hundreds of discharge cycles. And so, one day out camping, draw it down, that's a discharge cycle, right? And then the next day out, that's the second discharge cycle. So if you have 300 discharge cycles, that's a year worth of use on the batteries. AGM, let's say that you roughly get 2 times that. So you get 500 discharge cycles. So you get a year and a half, 2
durability
years
really is
of
the
batteries.
difference there.
Lithium ion, talking about 2,000
Oh, for sure.
discharge cycles.
Yeah.
And so while it may seem up front that the lithium ion is more expensive, if you look at it in terms of discharge cycles, lithium ion is probably actually on par cost-wise, maybe even slightly cheaper. It's definitely, if you built some sort of equation that said discharge cycles divided by cost divided by weight, then lithium clearly is going to win out.
Yeah.
Size too, right? So your lead acid batteries, you're talking about a 110 amp hour lead acid battery that's going to be about this big, and in that you need at least 5 of them.
Which is going to fill the entire nose.
It's going to fill the entire nose of the trailer. It's a lot of tongue weight,
Yeah.
right? Your AGM batteries, they're going to be the exact same size. And your lithium ion, like your whole brain for 3,000 watts, is going to be, and that's your batteries, that's your inverter,
Yeah.
that's your charger.
They look like a cooler, the size of
Yeah.
a cooler, basically.
Yeah,
right?
you just roll that goal 0 in there, plug your solar panel into it, and then the kids can plug right into it. You got USB chargers on it, everything like that. The thing we'll have to figure out is if you go with something like a Goal Zero, lithium ion kind of integrated system, is we'll have to figure out a plug-in for the rest of the lights in the trailer and the
Right.
diesel heater. And I think what we'll do is we'll come out of it into a fuse box, and then we'll wire everything into the fuse box.
That's what I was going to ask. So you have one point that basically connects to the rest of the trailer.
Exactly, yeah.
You unplug that, you can take the whole thing out.
Exactly. That way we got one thing to do. Even with your 110 throughout the trailer, we can have regular house outlets. We'll have one spot to plug all those house outlets, be like an extension cord, into your Goal Zero, and then at each of your spots, then you've got we'll plumb in nice wall outlets so it look like it's, but you just basically it's an extension cord off of the Goal Zero. So it's up to you, but that's kind of pros and cons on why lead acid, why AGM, why lithium ion. Budget build, 100% lead acid. Budget build with a little bit more durability, AGM. If you're always going to be camping in really, really cold conditions, like really cold conditions, freezing or below, I wouldn't go lithium ion. But my sense is you probably won't. If you are, you're going to be running the diesel heater. So even though you're drawing current off the lithium ion, it performs better because it's in a warmer ambient temperature.
Yeah, I was not thinking lithium ion.
Yeah.
When we first started discussing just the cost, the cold I think is still a factor because I do think we'll be in the mountains where
Yep.
it'll be cold. But the space, the weight, the number of cycles, I mean, it is lower cost in the end, long run.
Yeah, I mean, if we just do the math on it right here, let's say that we got 300 cycles on our lead acid, and again, these are just approximate numbers. Somebody will comment below on actual numbers, but we got 300 there. I think I'm off camera.
You're off. I feel like I need to pull out my calculator right now.
300 there. Let's say we have 500 cycles here on the AGM, and we have 2,000 here on the lithium ion. So if we take $3,000 divided by 2,000 cycles, we're like $1.5 per cycle. If we take 900 divided by 500, what are we at there in the number of cycles? Or wait, it costs 900, divided by 500. 1.8. And then 600 divided by 300, we're at 2. So as you can see, it really starts to show up, and they're relative, right?
Yeah.
Actually, they probably manufacture lithium ion cheaper than that, but they know that they're relative on cost per cycle, right? So we didn't plan that either, but it organizes nicely, right? $2 per cycle, 1.8 per cycle, 1.5 per cycle.
Portable,
lighter.
Can you, is there any way to insulate, because up north you would actually kind of insulate your batteries to help mitigate some of the cold weather?
We put it in a cabinet that has some sort of insulation around it. Yeah. The other thing too is that if you were 2 years into this and you say, I'm going to sell this trailer and build a new one, you probably let the lead acid and the AGM go with that trailer. You probably pop your own Goal Zero out though and say, hey, all you got to do is add your own little unit back in right here, and here's where you plug it in. Mm-hmm. And so you probably end up not losing that cost if you sell the trailer later. You probably keep this and use it for other stuff. Mm-hmm. Something to think about.
And then as far as interchangeability, so if someone's non-committal, thinking, eventually I want to go with a Goal Zero, or in the scenario you brought up, I want to back out of the Goal Zero and sell it with, a few AGMs in there. Is it a big, because you basically wired your entire trailer to one plug.
Yeah.
Which then you can just put that through your batteries if you want.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. If we wanted to do that, effectively what you're doing is you're saying, so in that scenario, you use your trailer 2 years, you're ready to build a new one or a different one, or you want to try something new, you pull out your Goal Zero, we drop in 2 lead acid batteries for the people that may not have as much power consumption, may not need the mood lights as long as you need them, and then you sell the trailer with lead acid batteries because it's all wired at the same spot to begin with.
Okay.
I really sound like a salesman for a lithium ion battery, but there are some real advantages. Weight is your biggest one, I think.
Yeah. Well, in the space, because the nose, I want to keep the trailer, I want to maximize the use of my space, and so there are a few things I can put in the nose. Mm-hmm. That if I have the entire bottom of that nose full of batteries, which we're getting pretty close with, what are we saying, half a dozen AGMs?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can probably put 2 in the deep part of the nose, 20 mm-hmm. inches, and then the other ones have to go along this way. Yep. So I've added, so I've got 4 feet and the nose full on the bottom.
Yeah, like 4 feet this way.
The tip of the nose. So I've only got the little bits at the ends left for any other components, pumps, other wires, switches. My little diesel heater has to fit in that little. So.
I didn't think about that, but that is your other concern, cubic feet, because we are dealing with such a small space. So you got weight is a factor, cubic feet are a factor, and then cost and temperature factor in there somewhere as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, cubic foot, because you're 7 by 12 by 7, or no, not 7. 7 foot by 12 foot by 6 feet tall.
Yeah, 6
roughly cubic feet wise.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a pretty big cubic foot consideration because you're probably 3x cubic foot consumption on lead acid and AGM.
To be fair, I could put AGMs outside. If it was a real issue.
You could,
right? But
you could put them on the tongue.
6 on that little bit of tongue, they'd have to be stacked, and it would have to be a pretty interesting setup.
Take some engineering.
Yeah. And I really do think I don't want to cheap out on the power. When I camp by myself, obviously consumption will be really low.
Yep.
When I go with the kids, I don't want to be stuck at campgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to go off-grid, but off-grid kind of still with their iPads. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the happy medium for amp hour.
There is that 3,000 watts puts you in the Goal Zero Yeti 3,000. There is a Goal Zero Yeti 1,500 that's $1,500 in cost, so it's half the capacity, half the cost, 2/3 the size. You might be able to get away with it, but if you go more than a day without sun, I think you're going to be power budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
Unless we grossly overestimated one of your power consumption things.
So running off the vehicle to recharge as an like if I need a little bit of power, mm-hmm. It'll charge the Goal Zero the same way.
It will. So let's talk about that for a minute, because I think this is something also that people kind of overestimate. So you can absolutely charge any of these. The lead acid, the AGM, by idling your car, right? So you're in a campsite, you're going to idle your car, and hey JP, I'm just going to idle the car to recharge my batteries, and it's absolutely viable to do that. let's just talk about the mechanics or the physics of it, if you will. So when you are charging any of these off of your cigarette lighter plug, right? Most of the cigarette lighter plugs are 125 watts. And if you're at 3,000 watts capacity, how long would you have to idle your car? More math.
Yeah.
3,000
so 3,000
watts.
divided by 125?
Yep.
Yeah, 24 hours.
It would take you a full day of idling your car to recharge your lithium ion battery.
Yeah.
Now, with the amp hour and the AGM, you could possibly charge them faster than 125 watts by wiring them directly to the
Alternator.
car system and alternator, but still, even at 10 amps. And if you've drawn down 265 amp hours at 10 amps, you're still talking about 18 hours or so to recharge. So yes, you can, but it takes a long time for a car to recharge.
So you're talking about cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
If I have it rigged under the hood,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
got to be faster than
Yeah.
that.
12 to 18.
Still.
Yeah.
Still over
Yeah.
12 hours.
You'd have to idle it for 12 hours. On a normal car with a normal alternator, 12 to 18 hours to refill that. That Goal Zero plugged into your house, we'll look it up here in a little bit, but I think it's like 6 or 8 hours plugged into the wall in your house to recharge it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is, you have the option with the Goal Zero of kind of your back. So if you're solar, you've got a gloomy day, you have the car. And so worst case, you can do a little bit of power to your trailer.
Exactly.
Or run a plug from your inverter from the car to plug the essentials or whatever.
Yeah, well, it'd be more efficient to charge it off 12 volt because otherwise you're going from 12 volt to 120, 120 back
True,
to 12.
that's true.
So you got loss on both
So
sides.
burning fuel to convert.
To convert
there's
up,
a
to
lot
convert
of
back down.
a lot of inefficiencies there.
Yep.
I think for me,
Yep.
the ion battery makes more sense right now.
Yeah.
I think we have to research a little bit in the end if it's worth the 2100. I think as far as long term, it's cheaper,
Yeah.
right? We're at 1.5 less space. It's the cold, and I think even now we can mitigate a little bit. And the reality is that's only going to be for maybe a third of the camping trips
Right.
where that's going to be a factor.
Yeah.
I do think it will be a factor going up into the mountains where, even here it might not feel so cold, but overnight in the mountains
yeah.
it's cold quite a bit longer.
Yep. I think you should totally go with lithium ion and not so carry about it.
Yeah. I feel like it makes your life easier too.
Oh, it does.
I mean, we still wire everything in the trailer, but
I geek out on doing it no matter how you pick doing it. It is easier with the lithium ion. Well, we're actually going to wire the same number of lights.
that's true.
We're going to wire the heater.
it's just
Everything.
what
It's going to go into the
comes
fuse
to
box. It's either going to go into a bank of batteries or it's going to go into the Goal Zero. And the difference is that we're going to have cables going
Yeah.
across the batteries to have them all run as
It's not that much more work.
a parallel circuit. So it's not a ton of savings labor wise.
Yeah.
You have a few more things to buy in addition to. So here's the other consideration. In addition to the batteries, you have more to buy than just the batteries. Even in the Agm and Lead Acid setup, we'll have solar charge controller. We will have charger. We will have cables to connect all the batteries.
Mounts, you want to mount those in there.
Mount them in, battery voltage monitors, and so you add another solar charge controller, which we'll probably have to get with the Goal Zero, so that probably cancels out. But add in another $200 or $300
Mm-hmm.
on top of the AGM and the lead acid costs, and so in the lead acid you're at that point $800, and in the AGM case at that point you're at, call it $1,200 versus $3,000 one and done. So that makes your cost per cycle even look more attractive for
Yeah.
lithium ion.
I think we've made a case for me.
Yeah.
And I know for people that have like much smaller trailers, like
Yeah.
teardrops, they're thinking, what are you worried about space? I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a big trailer, but it is a factor because I'm going to have, the kids, like we want all the space for, sleeping or using.
It's a small spot,
Yeah.
and you've got a lot of demands for mood lights, and so
The mood lights and the sound system.
sound system, yeah. I mean, you make your trade-offs.
Did I mention the disco ball in the middle?
Yes. Laser light show.
Yeah. Okay, this is good. I think lithium ion is really hard lean right now.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next part of the plan.